have a limit here for this session. Well, my question is, can everybody hear me, please? Because I cannot see you on the screen. That is to say, just see your names, but just make sure. I want to make sure that you're listening to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Camila, Florencia, Jessica, and Miranda are there, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm recording the lesson, right? But my question first would be if you have been able to read the section on constructivism. That was section 1.5, I think.
Yes.
All right.
No.
Okay. Well, how did you find it?
I really liked it.
Did you like it? Because did
Yes.
you have any idea? I mean, had you studied something connected to constructivism before?
Yes, in problemática del aprendizaje, we saw a little bit of that, but in Spanish.
About
About
constructivism?
constructivism, yes.
Have you, were you familiar with the cognitive development theory of Piaget?
Yes.
Okay, yes, generally we are familiar with this because generally in didactics and in pedagogy you have this, or not?
We didn't see these topics in those subjects, but we saw them in problemática.
All right. Have you had pedagogy or not, or didáctica general?
Yes.
Okay, because many times some of the students said that some of the topics had, in a way, overlapped with some of the readings I have given you. So if that is the case, please, you should let me know, okay? Sandra, we have already studied this. It's not necessary for us to see it again. All right, you just let me know, okay?
All right.
About the constructivism, what is the main idea of education from the point of view of this approach? What can you tell me about that?
They focus on the human mind.
On the human mind, isn't that cognitivism?
Yes. Yes.
That is cognitivism. And the way we learn, right? I mean, how the mind works when learning. That would be the main concern of cognitivism. But
Yes,
what about
they are very similar.
The names, you mean?
Yes.
Because the ideas are not the same, right? In fact, there is an element that is considered that is not new because it was one of the concerns even of behaviorism, but constructivism aims at what? In general.
I understood that it's a construction of the previous knowledge and the knowledge that we are acquiring.
Okay, well, but previous knowledge plays a vital role, okay? But what is that? Constructivism thinks that we have to make sense of the world, right? And we should pay attention to the whole person, the education of the whole person. So it's not just learning facts that is important, but it's also learning how to learn, right? One of the matters that, let's say, take a vital role, an essential role in constructivism. Now, I'm going to share the screen with you, right? Because I had prepared this questionnaire that you already have it, Okay, can you see it? It says, unlike other earlier approaches, constructivism places the focus, so we have already said that,
On the learning process.
and the learning process, okay? To give what? To find ways to give personal meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, whatever I learn should be something that I can apply, right? In my, let's say, immediate world, to make it, let's say, purposeful. So syllabus is one of the main concerns of constructivism, right? Okay, then it says, Piaget pointed out that learning wasn't, there is something that Piaget said, that learning it was not that.
An accumulation of facts.
Of facts and skills. All right, so it wasn't an accumulation of facts or skills. It had to do with an interaction. Remember that constructivism can be placed under the umbrella of interactionism, right? Then, according to him, experiences and the world are, you said that before when we were introducing this. They are an individual construction. So the way I experience the world has to do with many factors. The person I am, right? And the people who are, let's say, next to me, and the people, let's say, and the community where I live. And when there is much emphasis on the community, then we are facing social constructivism or cultural constructivism, such as Vygotsky, right? Well, then Piaget sequenced from infancy to adulthood, how what? That is the cognitive development, right? Theory. So it has to do with what? It sequenced infancy to adulthood, how?
He mentions the stages, which is the action-based, and he mentions how the learner is growing from infant to adulthood.
Okay, so but to make it fit, Piaget sequence from infancy to adulthood, how? The learner,
How people know things.
how people
No things.
know things or come to see the world, right? And why is it so important for us to be aware of this?
Because as teachers, we have to know which age we are teaching and how we are going to approach them and what kind of activities they are able to do.
Right? Especially because of the different levels of abstraction, right? Sometimes we may devise a task which is not suitable for the level of maturity of the learners, right? Now, during the sensory motor stage, the child
Explores the environment.
through the
Basic senses.
the senses, right? So the senses are vital. That's why activities such as the ones that are proposed in total physical response work very well with infants, right? And well, we are referring there the sensory motor stage, right? Total physical response has to do with what? With orders, right? And generally those orders or commands are obeyed by a physical response. That is to say, they do something with their body. And this is the way you experience the world first thing, right? Okay. Now, as children become more organized, what happens? They how do you call this stage? Where they are a bit more organized in terms of actions, the way they coordinate their thinking with their movements.
Intuitive or pre-optional?
Pre-operational, okay, the pre-operational stage, right? Where they start having notions of, let's say, the durability of things, right? In the pre-operational stage, a child realizes that even though an object is not in their present, it doesn't mean that it ceased to exist, right? Okay, and they start being able to control their bodies. Okay, so when they do number one or do number two, for example, and that is having a little bit of control over their bodies and the world, right? When do they start developing language? I mean, we're talking about the mother tongue, right? In the sensory motor or in the pre-operational?
Pre-operational.
Yes, right? In the sensory motor, they respond to language mainly. Okay? Now, remember that these are notions. Piaget he wanted to explain the way, let's say, the mind matures. It's not that these stages in terms of age are rigid. In fact, they are just notions for us to, let's say, have a kind of orientation in terms of requirements or demands that we may make on our learners, right? As children, internalized actions start to take place, which means what? What are internalized actions? Did you understand that concept or not? What are internalized actions?
Is that they start thinking about their actions or imagining about that?
They are thinking about their actions. In fact, they can sort of sketch in their minds actions and intentions. So they can deliberately plan something, right? They can conceive an idea in their minds and then take it into action. So for example, imagine that they want to reach something that is not, let's say, at hand. So they may, let's say, work out a plan to stand on a chair and reach the object. That has to do with internalizing actions. They can think of plans and they can plan them in their minds and then put their bodies into action. And why is it so? Because language has appeared, right? And when language appears in somebody's life, let's say mind, it organizes thinking. Right? That's why language is so important, because you start having a better memory because you give names to things, right? Now, internalized actions have to do with giving names to actions, right? Being able to call out, right, feelings, and the idea of cause and effect, okay? For example, those are internalized actions, cause and effect. All right?
Yes.
I don't know, if something is not clear, you let me, for example, when they can imagine things, can plan their actions. But how do you imagine things? By having pictures and being able to call them out too. So how important language is, right? That it organizes our thinking, right? Then, later at around the age of 7, the child enters what?
The concrete operational stage.
So, and he understands that what? That some, let's say, phenomenon can be reversed. The example in the book was that of ice. Can you think of another one? Do you remember when you were in 2nd grade in biology? What did they ask you to do with, let's say, with peas or some seeds? They make you have a plant or not? Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes.
Well, in a way, it has to do with this, with observing how something may turn into something different. So you can, I mean, it's not that you couldn't put the seed with the plant. I mean, you knew there was a relationship between them, right? The idea of change and process and belonging, right? A child that is 4 does not understand. For example, if you ask a child that has put seeds into, let's say, the soil, right? And then he sees flowers, he cannot put the two processes together. He doesn't really know that from the seeds, the flowers grew. In fact, he believes it's a kind of magic that has worked. And magic, right, is what explains most of the things. And now, little by little, gradually, the child starts reasoning. And he can give some rational thought to processes. And this has to do with the immediate world. So there we are what? We are with the first notions, for example, of what a noun is, a verb is, an adjective. You start with children that are 7 on to give them these let's say, categories and knowing that they would understand what those categories mean. If you say, oh, well, today we're going to learn some adjectives connected to personality, and you say that to a child that is 4 or 5, he really doesn't know what you are referring to. But if you talk to a child that is 8 or 9, and you refer to these categories, they understand. Right? Because they start gradually, of course, to have some abstract thought. Because it's not that abstract thought or thinking starts by the age of 10. No, it becomes before, but it's rather rudimentary. Okay? Very, very simple. It still has, sometimes it is attached to images. Right? They still need the visual stimuli. That's why the course books for children have lots of colors and big visual aids. It's because of that. Because the child needs to picture somehow, right, clearly some concepts. They start internalizing them, but they need extra support. And the visual stimuli works for that. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Think about this. When you take a look at the course books for children, most of the listening activities are based on what?
On matching.
Pictures, I think.
Pictures. They have to tick or circle or color pictures because of this. Right? It's not that they don't understand, but they need, right, some kind of close bond with the images, right? Because it is the way that the mind, in a way, can round up an idea. Okay? You can start even using metaphors with them, but these metaphors should be, let's say, together with some kind of visual stimuli that proves it. All right, do you follow that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting. It's really interesting the way, I mean, Piaget devised all these ideas, right? And it helped a lot pedagogy. Now, let's go on. Unlike other earlier approaches, constructivism places the focus. I think I have repeated myself, or not?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, because when I did this, I copied and pasted the page, and it copied and pasted all the ideas. I thought I had. Then I will correct it. Okay. Formal operational thinking gives way to
Abstract reasoning.
and that is, think about mathematics. As you move on primary school, right, the different stages in primary school, mathematics becomes more and more complex and more abstract. Think about formal operational thinking, fractions, right? And at the beginning, how do you understand the fraction? By looking at the, let's say, rectangle and dividing the rectangle into different slides, or not?
Yes.
Well, because in fact, in order to grasp that abstraction, you need some visual stimuli. Later on, when you are in 6th grade, right, or first year at secondary school, those, let's say, graphics disappear. And you know what a fraction stands for, right? And you can even think of a fraction for different, let's say, measures. For example, you can think of a half of, let's say, liquid, a half of, for weight, half kilo, right? Half a mile or half a kilometer. And you can sort of transfer this idea and apply it to different categories. And that has to do with, let's say, abstraction, right? Formal operational thinking. So your thinking becomes practical. And you are not so attached to the concrete world, right?
Yes.
Then when teaching a foreign language, we should bear in mind that, well, something you mentioned that. Well, that is, the learners develop what? A certain
Abstract reasoning.
And I mean, this abstract reasoning gives way to different cognitive skills that will eventually happen or develop in some kind of order. And we may think of these, let's say, stages to understand the order in which the, let's say, cognitive skills develop on, let's say, on average. This doesn't mean that there are children who can do it before, okay, or later, or that they become, let's say, sometimes good at understanding some notions, but their other let's say, skills are not so well developed. Right? We have to give way to the differences too. That these differences, I mean, have to do with our inner world and our outer world, right? Okay, these are attempts to generalize something that cannot be measured exactly, but it is practical in terms of organizing what? Teaching, because we cannot plan a lesson that is specially for one student. Let's say paying attention to the individualities of all the students. It's very difficult when you've got 30 students in a course. So these generalizations give you a helping hand in those situations, because we cannot say that all children will develop in this way. But in fact, in general, this is the way it happens, right?
Yes.
Then, Piaget advocates that cognitive development is?
A process
A
of
process of
maturation.
maturation.
That's it. Okay. So from the simplest to the most complex.
No.
All right. All right. And did he include the idea of genetics playing a vital role in this or not?
Yes,
Yes,
he says
he
that
said,
genetics and experience interact in the process.
By referring to genetics as being one of the factors that conditions this, there he's sort of, let's say, he's moving towards what approach?
positivism.
Cognitivism, okay? He's like withdrawn to cognitivism, but remember that Piaget was, in a way, the first one to talk about what? The experience of the world. They used to say the notion of interaction. So it's not just the genetics, but genetics and the experiences. And the fact that we learn by doing. And if we are not, let's say, if there is no stimuli around us, we learn nothing. That is what he said, right? Or he thought. In fact, at the beginning, when he started writing about equilibration, adaptation, and assimilation, and all that, he, in a way, was not very concerned with education. He wanted to study the way the mind worked and how the person, in a way, interacted. But it was not about school, right? He was not. He was more a biologist at the beginning rather than anything else, right? I don't think that we will be able to finish this today, all right? Probably on Wednesday we'll go on, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Because my idea is to go into deep with this. These are the foundational ideas for the book. The book is about constructivism. It analyzes, let's say, language teaching from the point of view of constructivism. It takes a position, and that's the way, I mean, in fact, they are honest. The authors of Psychology for Language Teachers, they take a position from the very start. That doesn't mean they are not going to develop or address other approaches or schools of thought, right? But they say that they believe that that constructivism is, let's say, the one that is, let's say, more suitable to respect and to believe in a democratic kind of education. Now, equilibration. What can you say about equilibration? Because remember that Piaget refers to adaptation, right? Okay, so equilibration is what? Is the balance
between what is known and what is being experienced.
Okay, so we are always, let's say, faced with the challenge of, let's say, taking in something new, but not just by observing it in a passive role, by becoming, right, let's say, doers of this equilibration process, right? We have to do something. That is what Piaget believes, right? That the learner is active.
Yes.
Accommodation stands for what?
It's a process by we like assimilate or what we modify what we already know.
That's it, okay? So accommodation stands for what? We start perceiving as something new, and in the adaptation, our schemata is what happens with the schemata? The schemata is, let's say, the frame you have to know the world, right? The foundations you have to experience the world. When something new, right, a new concept, new information, you're confronted with this new information, what happens? There is accommodation first when you take it in and accept that there is something more to what you know, right? So you know, and you sort of acknowledge that this is right. So what? First, you need to understand that, and that it would be accommodation. And then adaptation is when you make it yours, right? When this new knowledge or this new concept, right, is what? Is starts being, let's say, a tool in your, let's say, background knowledge. It becomes part of your background knowledge. It becomes part, it has a place in your schemata. Was that clear or not?
Yes.
Well, do you know what? We have some 5 minutes left, but for next class, what I want you to do is to think of, let's say, in the language classroom or any other, let's say, situation, I want you to think about an example that can, let's sort of demonstrate the process of equilibration. That is to say, accommodation, assimilation, right? So that you can explain it to me. All right?
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
want, there are several, right? It's easy to think about that. But I would like you to give me your own examples. You know what? Why? Because if I give you my own, right? Then, I mean, you are not becoming active participants. All right? And we should focus, right? We have to follow constructivism, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You can even think about what is happening with the quarantine, right? And how the students are, let's say, experiencing learning nowadays, right? Think about that. I mean, try to associate it with something that could be happening now, right? Or that you have been through, or that, I mean, it has happened with your students, if you have been coaching children, if you have somebody in your family you are teaching. Even, it doesn't matter if it is not English, right? Provided it's something that you have, let's say, observed, or something that you are learning now. Okay?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Well, that will be the task, and then we'll go on with the questionnaire. And please, if there are things that are blurred, that I'm not clear enough, you have to let me know. Write them down, okay, on your, let's say, copybooks or the notebooks you have, and say, Sandra, I would like to ask you a question. This is not clear, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
I have been recording this. Let me stop the share of the screen. I'm going to upload it in the afternoon for those people that were not in this class. Today it's Camila, Cielo, Jessica, Victoria, Florencia, and Miranda. All right? Well, girls, so you know that you have to prepare something connected with assimilation, a clear example, right?
Okay.
Well, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.